In most industries, it's pretty normal to just stick to what works. That couldn't be more true with Hollywood. The tried and tested methods are stuck to more often than not. In a world where box office numbers count for everything, it's very difficult for new ideas and new twists on a genre to make it through the series of approvals required to get a movie made. When a new idea or a new take on a classic does make it through and proves to be successful, they usually change the game completely. Deadpool is one of those game changers. Superhero movies, especially when it came to Marvel and DC stables, were family-friendly affairs. That was until a Ryan Reynolds obsession with the character, fueled further by his cameo in X-Men Origins Wolverine, led to this unlikely character getting a standalone movie greenlit. An R-rated superhero movie shouldn't have worked. The meager budget put behind the production showed that Fox agreed with that idea. Despite it all, Deadpool was a major success, both with critics and at the box office, and it has changed the superhero genre forever as a result. This is the unlikely tale of how Deadpool came to the big screen and how it changed a genre forever. Deadpool, a very unconventional anti-hero, first burst onto the comic book scene in 1991, making his debut in The New Mutants number 98. Created by Fabian Nicieza and Rob Liefeld, Deadpool was initially created as a parody of DC's Deathstroke, which explains the similarities in their names. Wade Wilson for Deadpool and Slade Wilson for Deathstroke. Originally introduced as a villainous mercenary, Deadpool quickly evolved into a fan-favorite character, known for his regenerative abilities, superhuman strength, agility, and most notably, his habit of breaking the fourth wall and speaking directly to the reader. Deadpool's journey from comic book pages to the big screen was as unconventional as the character himself. Despite his popularity in comics, bringing the Merc with the Mouth to life in a faithful adaptation wasn't easy. The road to Deadpool's solo film was full of false starts, studio hesitations, and that absolute mishandling of the character in X-Men Origins Wolverine. However, much like Deadpool's character, the project refused to die, eventually leading to one of the most surprising and successful superhero film adaptations in recent memory. It all began in May 2000, all the way back at the turn of the millennium. Artisan Entertainment announced a groundbreaking deal with Marvel Entertainment in that strange pre-MCU and Disney period to co-produce, finance, and distribute a number of films based on Marvel characters. That list of potential movies included Deadpool. This deal was part of Marvel's strategy to license their characters to various studios, as they were not yet producing films of their own. Artisan, fresh off the success of the Blair Witch Project, saw potential in bringing smaller Marvel characters to life with budgets under $80 million. However, the Artisan-Marvel partnership didn't immediately meet a production plan for Deadpool. By February 2004, the project had shifted to New Line Cinema, with screenwriter and director David S. Goyer and actor Ryan Reynolds attached. Reynolds, who had worked with Goyer on Blade Trinity, was drawn to the role after learning that in the comics, Deadpool describes his appearance as Ryan Reynolds crossed with a Shar-Pei. From that moment on, Ryan Reynolds and Deadpool became joined at the hip, and it's hard to imagine the movie would have ever seen the light of day if it weren't for his star power. New Line executive Jeff Katz agreed, believing he was the only actor suitable for the role. Despite the enthusiasm, the project hit a significant roadblock due to rights issues with 20th Century Fox and their X-Men films. As Deadpool was closely associated with the X-Men universe in the comics, Fox held certain rights that complicated New Line's ability to move forward with the film. It looked like a total non-starter, and it was, at least for now. Then, Reynolds got his shot as Wade Wilson, but it wasn't the Deadpool he wanted to play. In X-Men Origins Wolverine, the character was totally different to the one from the comics that Reynolds had fallen in love with. He had several added superpowers and his mouth was sewn shut, a nod to his motor mouth, but not in a good way. The film's post-credits scene did show that Deadpool was still alive, meaning the character could show up again. Thankfully, that version of Deadpool hasn't been back on the screen since. Even if it wasn't the Deadpool Reynolds or fans wanted, the film had a successful opening weekend, and Fox officially began development on a standalone Deadpool film, with Reynolds attached to star and X-Men producer Lauren Schuler Donner involved. To the joy of fans everywhere, this new project was set to ignore the Wolverine version of Deadpool and return to the character's roots, emphasizing his slapstick tone and fourth-wall breaking tendencies. This early development phase set the stage for what would eventually become the 2016 Deadpool film, but the road ahead was still long and filled with challenges. First off, Fox's approach to the project was very cautious. Given the character's unconventional nature and the potential risks associated with making an R-rated superhero film. Remember that Deadpool paved the way for R-rated superhero features, and it was hard to get executives at Fox to stomach that sort of risk. Not yet anyway. The studio was concerned about the financial viability of an R-rated superhero movie, as most successful superhero films at the time were PG-13. There were also concerns about how to faithfully adapt Deadpool's fourth-wall breaking humor and violent tendencies while still making the film accessible to a broader audience. The turning point came when test footage for the film, directed by Tim Miller and starring Ryan Reynolds, leaked online in 2014. The overwhelming positive fan response to this footage convinced Fox executives to greenlight the project. Reynolds has hinted he might have been responsible himself for the leak, and it did the trick. But still, the film was met with huge budget constraints. Fox agreed to make the film, but were only willing to put up a much smaller budget than typical superhero blockbusters due to the risks being involved. This was reportedly around $58 million. This limited budget, however, came with a trade-off: more creative freedom for the filmmakers. This creative freedom enabled director Tim Miller, writers Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick, and star Ryan Reynolds to craft a film that stayed true to the character's comic book roots. They were able to include Deadpool's signature fourth-wall breaks, meta humor, and violent action sequences without studio interference. The budget constraints also forced the creative team to be innovative, leading to some of the film's most memorable elements. For instance, the film's self-aware humor often poked fun at its own limitations, such as jokes about only being able to afford 2 X-Men characters. In Tim Miller, the project couldn't have landed a better director to make things work. In 1995, Miller had co-founded Blur Studio with David Stinnett and Kat Chapman, establishing himself as a creative force in the visual effects and animation world. Under his leadership, Blur Studio became renowned for its work on game cinematics, commercials, and feature films. Miller's talent was recognized early on when he was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Animated Short Film in 2005 for Go for Broke, which he co-wrote and executive produced. Before directing Deadpool, Miller had already made a name for himself in the industry. He designed memorable title sequences for films like The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and Thor: The Dark World. This body of work showed his ability to create visual striking and narratively compelling content with limited and huge budgets. Miller's involvement with Deadpool officially began on April 8, 2011, when 20th Century Fox hired him to direct the film. Miller's extensive experience in visual effects and animation, combined with his understanding of comic book aesthetics, made him an ideal choice to bring the superhero to life on the big screen, and his hire went under the radar, given it was his first directorial role. The hiring of Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick as screenwriters for Deadpool was probably the biggest moment in the film's development. After the character's controversial portrayal in X-Men Origins Wolverine, 20th Century Fox wanted to reboot Deadpool with a fresh and faithful adaptation. Reese and Wernick, known for their work on Zombieland, were brought in to pitch their vision. At first, the pitch didn't include an origin story, but Ryan Reynolds, by this time invested as a major stakeholder in the project, didn't agree with that idea. He knew that starting from square one was essential to make this work. The pair managed to get a second version on Reynolds' desk, and this time it was the right fit. Ryan Reynolds was both a star and a producer, and that meant Reynolds was massively involved in shaping how the film eventually turned out. Reese and Wernick would send him pages of the script, and he would provide feedback and notes. This collaborative process ensured that the film captured Deadpool's unique voice and humor. Reynolds' passion for the character and his understanding of Deadpool's essence were instrumental in crafting a script that stayed true to the comics while appealing to a broader audience, which is exactly what Fox wanted from the movie. With the script ready to go, the project also needed a cast that could deliver the perfect support for Reynolds' star power and a larger-than-life lead character. At least there was no drawn-out process to find the lead actor. Reynolds had effectively been Deadpool for years. For such a prolific actor that has appeared in several iconic projects in a long and successful career, Wade Wilson is the one he will always be remembered for. For the other key cast members, the process was more traditional, but no less important. In January 2015, TJ Miller and Ed Skrein entered talks to join the film. Miller was considered for an additional comic voice, which turned out to be Deadpool's friend Weasel. Skrein was in discussions for a villainous role eventually cast as Ajax, the film's antagonist. The search for the female lead was probably the most extensive. In February 2015, Fox tested several actresses for this role. Ultimately, Marina Baccarin won the part of Vanessa, Deadpool's love interest. Gina Carano was casted as Angel Dust, adding a formidable physical presence to the villain's side. The casting of Colossus presented a unique challenge. Daniel Cudmore, who had played the character in previous X-Men roles, was offered the chance to reprise his role or provide a reference for a CGI version voiced by another actor. Cudmore declined both offers, leading to Stefan Kapicic being cast to voice the CGI Colossus. One of the most unconventional casting decisions was for Negasonic Teenage Warhead. The character was chosen largely for her name, as the writers liked how it sounded. Brianna Hildebrand was cast in this role, bringing a deadpan teenage presence to contrast with Deadpool's manic energy. The casting process faced several challenges. The film's relatively modest budget for a superhero movie, around $58 million, meant that big-name stars were largely out of reach. This constraint, however, allowed the filmmakers to focus on finding actors who best fit their roles rather than relying on star power. Another challenge was finding actors who could keep up with Reynolds' improvisational style and match the film's irreverent tone. This was particularly important for roles like Weasel and Blind Owl, who needed to have strong comedic chemistry with Reynolds. The casting decision proved to be largely successful, with the ensemble cast receiving praise for the performance and chemistry. Principal photography for Deadpool began on March 23, 2015 in Vancouver, Canada, under the working title Wham, which is a little inside joke from the script. If you know, you know. The production utilized various locations around the city to bring the film's gritty and unconventional superhero world to life. One of the primary filming locations was the Georgia Viaduct, a major elevated roadway in Vancouver. The production team secured permission to close the viaduct for 2 weeks, allowing them to film elaborate action sequences. This closure caused some controversy among local residents due to traffic disruptions, but it resulted in some of the film's most memorable scenes. The tight budget available and the ambitious vision for certain scenes led to several on-set challenges. Tim Miller and the crew had to be creative. They often used practical effects and clever camera work to maximize the impact of scenes while minimizing costs that would otherwise be needed for special effects. Reynolds frequently ad-libbed lines during filming. This spontaneity added to the character's trademark humor, but also presented challenges in maintaining continuity and pacing. The crew had to be flexible and quick to adapt to these impromptu additions. The challenges didn't hurt the production, with reports suggesting things were harmonious and collaborative. Reynolds in particular was praised for his dedication to the role and his willingness to perform many of his own stunts. Another budget saver too. Stunt coordinator Philip Silvera worked closely with Reynolds and the other actors to choreograph fight scenes that showcased each character's unique abilities while maintaining the film's unique tone and style. The shoot was done in just 48 days, and there was real buzz and excitement around the cast and crew about what they were doing. There was, of course, the chance that the audience wouldn't share that enthusiasm, and as the project entered post-production, those involved in the shoot had an anxious wait to see the end product they were so excited about being a part of. Post-production on Deadpool began immediately after principal photography wrapped, with the team facing the challenge of bringing together the various elements of this unconventional superhero film within a tight schedule and budget. The editing process was led by Julian Clark, who had worked previously on District 9 and Elysium. Clark worked closely with director Tim Miller to shape the film's unique tone, balancing action, comedy, and narrative progression. Visual effects work was one of the biggest parts of post-production, with several companies contributing to the film's 1,100 VFX shots. Digital Domain handled the bulk of the work, including the creation of the fully CGI character, Colossus. One of the most complex VFX tasks was bringing this character to life. It needed extensive motion capture and animation work to make sure that his metallic skin looked realistic, well as realistic as Metal Skin can look, and that his movements were fluid and believable. The teams also worked on enhancing practical effects such as Deadpool's healing factor, and creating digital environments for some of the more elaborate action sequences. The film's music was composed by Tom Holkenborg, also known as Junkie XL. Holkenborg created a score that blended orchestral elements with electronic and rock influences, reflecting Deadpool's unique character. The soundtrack also featured a mix of popular songs that complemented the film's tone and added to its pop culture savvy, parodical style. Finally, after 15 years of stops and starts, an almost unhealthy obsession for Ryan Reynolds had eventually grown into a motion picture that was filmed and ready. Now the studio had to find a way to market this fresh take on the superhero genre, and hope that the risk, albeit a low-cost one, paid off. The marketing campaign for Deadpool was nothing short of revolutionary, embracing the character's meta humor to create a buzz unlike any other superhero film had created before. Instead of relying on traditional marketing methods, the team behind Deadpool knew they needed to do something different, something fresh. This included breaking the fourth wall in promotional materials and using humor to engage audiences directly. The budget was low, but that didn't matter. Doing the marketing this way meant audiences knew exactly what they were getting into before they bought a ticket. The marketing team made full use of the power of social media and viral content to reach and engage with their target audience. They made hilarious and shareable content that hit the mark with existing comic book fans, and also with a wider audience of internet users. This included the 12 Days of Deadpool campaign leading up to Christmas 2015, which featured new posters, images, and videos each day, encouraging fans to share content across various platforms. Unless you're watching this video having never seen or heard about Deadpool before, which is unlikely, you'll be well aware that all the work put into this project, from the early development all the way through to the shooting, post-production, and marketing, paid off. Deadpool was an unlikely and incredible success, and thanks to the modest budget, it made a lot of money. Deadpool was a box office sensation, exceeding all expectations. Released on February 12, 2016, the film opened to a staggering $132.4 million over the 4-day President's Day weekend. It was a record number for an R-rated film. Its total domestic gross reached around $363 million by the end of its run, and that was just in the US. Worldwide, it made an additional $420 million from international markets, bringing its global total to around $783 million. Take away the $58 million budget, and that is a mighty profit for Fox. It wasn't just the numbers either. Critics also loved the movie. They praised Deadpool for its unique approach to the superhero genre. The film's humor and Ryan Reynolds' performance were highlighted as the things that stood out the most. On Rotten Tomatoes, Deadpool holds an 85% approval rating, with the consensus noting its gleeful, profane nature and hyper-violent action sequences. Critics appreciated the film's faithful adaptation of the comic book character, its innovative storytelling, and its willingness to break genre conventions. The audience response to the movie was unsurprisingly positive. Fans of the comic book character absolutely loved the film's faithful portrayal and the fact that it was full of rated R content. The film's witty dialogue, pop culture references, and meta-commentary hit the mark with viewers, making it a refreshing twist on the genre when compared to traditional superhero films. Simply put, Deadpool redefined what could and couldn't work in the genre. For a start, the success of Deadpool demonstrated that breaking the fourth wall could be effectively used in superhero films, encouraging future projects to explore similar techniques. Marvel has since done it themselves in She-Hulk, even if that series wasn't received very well overall. Deadpool also provided that there was a market out there for R-rated superhero films. Prior to its release, studios were completely against the idea of producing them, scared of having a limited audience and reduced box office returns as a result. However, Deadpool's massive financial success, grossing approximately $783 million worldwide on a $58 million budget, completely shattered these ideas. The film's mature content, including graphic violence, explicit language, and adult humor, actually appealed to a broad audience, maybe even more so than traditional family-friendly comic book adaptations. This opened the floodgates and paved the way for other rated R superhero films, Without Deadpool, movies like Logan and Joker, which also achieved critical and commercial acclaim, would never have come close to being greenlit. Deadpool's success demonstrated that superhero films could be edgy, mature, and unconventional while still achieving mainstream success. The character's impact on pop culture can be seen everywhere. The success of the first Deadpool film naturally led to sequels and expanded franchise plans. Deadpool 2 was released in 2018, building even further on the character's popularity and expanding the X-Force team to include other lovable misfits. The sheer amount of cameos, Brad Pitt and Matt Damon included, just shows how everyone wants a piece of this magic franchise. The integration of Deadpool into the Marvel Cinematic Universe became a hot topic following Disney's acquisition of 21st Century Fox in 2019. Marvel Studio President Kevin Feige confirmed that Deadpool would join the MCU. That might worry some fans, but they were quickly relieved to also find out that the franchise would be keeping its R rating. Even Marvel, the masters of the family feature film, didn't want to change the formula. Deadpool 3, now officially titled Deadpool and Wolverine, has released and will track the character's entry into the MCU. The film will bring together Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool and Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, which is a huge fan service, and something the friends have been looking to do since the first time the characters appeared together in Origins Wolverine. The future of the Deadpool franchise within the MCU remains a subject of speculation. While Ryan Reynolds has jokingly dismissed the idea of a Deadpool 4, given personal reasons, the character's popularity and unique position in the superhero landscape suggests that his presence in the MCU will likely extend beyond a single film. Even if Reynolds has plenty of non-cinema related projects to take up his time, including owning stakes in several sports teams and businesses, that said, he's so invested in Wade Wilson and Deadpool that if the fans want it, he would probably find it impossible to turn it down. Deadpool's journey from comic book pages to the big screen was a remarkable story. Persistence and commitment to an idea, creative risks, and fan-driven momentum provided all the twists and turns needed to make the production a movie-worthy story of its own. The film's success redefined the superhero genre by embracing R-rated content, meta-humor, and a fresh style on a limited budget. Its impact on the industry cannot be underestimated. It paved the way for more mature and innovative superhero films. As Deadpool integrates into the Marvel Cinematic Universe with Deadpool and Wolverine, the character's legacy continues to evolve, promising to bring his unique brand off to an even broader audience, while maintaining the identity that made the first movie so special.